So we're going to be going over the Wave-o-Matic script and just how to use this and what it does. Firstly, we're going to go over the UI. So the UI is as simple as possible. At the top here we have a settings and a guide. The settings controls the null created by the controller. Now this could be a null or it could be a solid, and you can also control the size with this slider here. From here we can go into the guide. So the guide is going to give you a bunch of information. First off, what the script name is and the version you currently have running, who the script is made. You're going to have who it's registered by, and then you can deactivate your license. At the bottom here you can say that you want to check for updates automatically, get further support, some video guides, and of course just closing this window. In the center here you have a written guide on how to use this script. So the start is a UI breakdown on what the UI does. Below this you have all the properties that will be created by the script itself and how to use these and what they do. Next you have a few checkboxes. So we have a position checkbox, a rotation checkbox, and a controller. So the position and rotation can be selected or deselected to which one you want, or have both of them on the Wave-o-Matic effect. You can then use a controller, so this allows you to basically keep expressions on your current layers and still have this wave applied to them on top. Here we have the apply Wave-o-Matic, and this is going to apply the Wave-o-Matic to the currently selected layers that you have. And here we have a delete Wave-o-Matic, and this will delete all the things Wave-o-Matic is connected to your currently selected layer. A tip for this is you only need to actually select the layer, not any of the controllers or anything else to delete Wave-o-Matic. Just select the single layer that has had the effect applied to it. The panel is also dockable, so I can come in here and actually dock this just down here, and it fits just nice and neatly in. So the first thing we're going to be going over is applying Wave-o-Matic to a simple layer here. So I'm going to center the anchor point, as everything works off the anchor point of the actual layer, so it's quite important to remember, just to know what's going on. Look at the anchor point and where that is positioned. We're going to come over to the Wave-o-Matic, apply a position and rotation effect, and then apply it to our current layer. Now that our layer has been affected, you'll see in the effects control we have the Wave-o-Matic effect. The Wave-o-Matic effect has a general settings, wave settings, and object settings. So the general settings allow you, of course, to enable the wave or enable the rotation, use the X dependent, and reverse. Then we have wave settings, what affects the actual wave's movement, and the object settings actually affects the rotational values of this object itself. So if I come in here and just quickly enable the wave and enable rotation, simply what's going to happen now is it has a simple little wave on the layer itself. I could then reverse this wave, and now the wave is actually going in reverse to its normal value, turn this back off, and it goes left to right. So the impact slider under wave setting is a connection between its original value, so whatever value it is, doesn't matter, is a connection between it and the wave itself. So you're actually connecting between the wave. At 0%, of course this isn't doing anything. The rotation will still work because we have that on, and this impact slider only affects the wave itself. If I was to turn the rotation off, then you'll see that there is nothing now. The higher this impact slider, the more connected it is to the wave, and the greater it will remove on your wave settings. For instance, 100% of course is 100% of your wave settings for this layer. And then we're going to take a look at the wave angle. So the wave angle here is basically in which way the wave is moving. So the wave currently is moving up and down. If I was to change this to say 90 degrees, now it's going left to right. This wave can be put in any angle and it will always work. The height of the wave is the distance between the original anchor point position, whatever that may be, and 100 would be 100 plus and 100 negative. So when you enable the wave, now it's moving 100 negative and 100 positive in each direction. If you were to increase this to 400, then it would be 400 in each direction. You can then change the speed of this wave by changing the setting here under waves per second, and this is going to change how many waves are coming in at one time. So if I was to change this to say 2, now you should be getting a much faster wave. The wave speed, on the other hand, is actually only working when there is an X dependent involved. And we'll be covering this a little bit later, so for now you can actually ignore the wave speed, it's irrelevant. We then have some Wave-o-Matic. So Wave-o-Matic is basically what it is, a Wave-o-Matic. It creates random effects based on what you have here. So your wave height would be, of course, the wave height. The waves per second would be waves per second, and the wave speed would be wave speed. So the wave height, if I enable this, it's now going to go from a minimum height of 200 and a max height of 400. It's going to change this at every 0.3 somewhat seconds, and then the height amount is basically how fast it goes between the new values when it changes. So with this on now, it's just moving between 200 and 400 at a slower rate, and you can see it's ever so slightly changing. Of course, the more this would go on, the more it would change. This is only a 10-second comp. If I wanted this to move more, put it to 0.6, it's going to change a little bit more faster than before. Using too high of a values for this can cause a jitter effect, hence the name up here, jitter. So putting at these very extreme values would actually cause them to jitter around. And this can be a desired effect, but not always. If you disable this, it will go back to its normal value of a height, 300. So the Wave-o-Matic effects are the same throughout. You get the same things in each of them. It is just the values what are slightly different each time. Then we come down to the height clamp. So what the height clamp is doing, it's allowing your wave to continue this motion. However, it's stopping the object from going past a certain point. However, the actual motion is carrying on. So it kind of creates a freeze during midair. So if I was to enable this at 0, 0, it's actually not going to move at all because 0, 0 of its current property is 0. Of course, you can still move this around, but the actual property of the wave is zeroed out due to this. If I was then to say the maximum height is 200, then as you'll see what happens is it's going down to 200 and then it freezes. Your wave is still past 200 because your wave is actually 300. So as soon as it reaches this bottom point here, it stops. Your wave is continuing to go and it's going to come back and catch it. Come back down, catch it, go back up. To show it at the same value of 300, now you'll see that it actually follows the wave all the way through and stops here because of the 0. Of course, this minimum height and maximum height can always be reversed by simply just reversing the values, and then you get a reverse of what the values are. So now we're jumping to the object settings, and the object settings are the rotation. Enabling the rotation at the top will automatically enable the X, Y, and Z rotation of the object automatically. So if it's a 3D layer, you can see it's now moving in 3 directions, and if it's a 2D layer, it's only moving in the Z rotation. If you wanted to stop this, you simply just disable the enable rotation, come into each one, and they have their own enable property here. So we're going to be focusing on the Z because we're currently working in a 2D space. So we're going to enable the Z rotation. And we have in here its own impact value. So like I was saying before, the top value up here, the impact, stops the wave. This impact in here stops the rotation. So you can stop everything by turning them back to 0, and now it's not going to do anything. increasing these impacts and increase the impact of the Z rotation is then going to re-enable these effects. The dampening is how much this object is going to rotate. So the lower the number here, the more it's going to rotate. The higher the number, the less it rotates. And it has some very extreme value changes. So that's why it's very important to always try and remember this impact slider and how that actually works with the dampening effect. If I was to say set this right at the bottom of the wave, I'm going to set this to 2%. And now if I use this slider, you can see that it's moving and I get a more precise action of where it's actually moving. If I was then to turn this down to 1% and 0%, at 0% it actually is rotating a full amount. You can see that there. And if I was to play this, then you'll see how the rotation is working at 0% and the extremity is between 0 and 8%. And of course, putting this at 100% makes it a rotation like this. Keep that 8. So WaveoMatic, like WaveoMatic and everything else under the WaveoMatic, the wave settings, is exactly the same concept. You have an enable rotate here. You then have percentages that can go between, is the min and the max, and then how fast this is happening, and then how fast it moves between A and B. So with a random effect now, it's not actually moving 100% of the wave, it's having its own effect in a way, and own rotation. If I was to change the values to, say, for example, 0 at its extreme, now you'll see that it'll be rotating more than before at random times. If you wanted to see this at a greater effect, I can simply just actually turn this down to 1, and now it's going to flick all over the place. Turn this back off and it goes back to its original settings. You also then have a clamp on this as well, so you have a clamp on every rotation property, and if you enable this, then of course it will act in exactly the same way if you were to put a min and a max in here. You'll be able to have it come down and then stop, and this is doing the same thing. Your rotation is still happening, however the clamp is stopping it at its maximum amount of value, and then it simply just cannot go past that. So that's all the settings in WaveoMatic, and now I'm going to show you how these can be applied to your layers. So we have an example of keyframes. So this works with keyframes as well. And as you can see here, I have a layer what is moving across time, just 2 keyframes basically moving it down. If you come into this, you can see that on the left there. I'm just going to center the anchor point now, and that's just moving across the middle. That's all fine. And we're going to apply the Wave-o-Matic property to this with the position and rotation. We're then simply going to enable the wave. We're then going to come into the object settings, open the Z rotation, and enable the Z rotation. Now what you can see is happening is it's moving, and as this layer is moving down, it still keeps its rotation, it still keeps its wave, and it just comes to a slow wave at the end. To make this more fancy, you could come over here to the last keyframe, keyframe for the Z rotation impact, and keyframe for the impact itself. Open these keyframes, come to the end of your composition, zero these out, ease them, and now you'll have a wave animation where it's slowly coming down as if it was falling from the sky, and then slowly comes to a stop. Another example of this is the expression. So this works with expressions, and it actually works automatically. So we have a wiggle expression here, which is just wiggling a random amount. And if I was to grab this and just center the anchor point again, the anchor point is now centered. So what you can do here is you come into the triangle, and then you can do your position and rotation. And then as soon as you click this, it's actually going to detect that it already has an expression in the rotation property. So it's actually going to add a controller for you what controls this now. So that means you can still have your wiggle animation. If I was to come into my wave controller, turn the wave on, turn the rotation on, now what you'll get is you'll have the wiggle on top of the wave itself. This allows you to have multiple expressions on multiple parts and still have them wave. If you wanted to get rid of this, then you'll simply click the triangle itself, come over to delete it, it's removed everything, and now it's back to your normal layer with the wiggle. So this is not only limited to, of course, 2D layers and 3D layers, this also works on cameras, on anything you have, any layer. So inside here we have a plane that's just made out of 2D layers or 3D layers, flat 3D layers, shape layers, and it's simply a camera rotating around the object. The plane itself has a few keyframes just to rotate it around, and the camera is just spinning around it while this plane every now and then rotates. And if I was to play this, it's a very boring animation. Just rotates every now and then. Very simple. So now with WaveoMatic, you can apply a wave to this paper plane. And if I was to apply this now, you can see WaveoMatic has been applied. Open up the general settings, turn the wave on. We're actually going to set the wave settings height to 400 to make it move a lot more. We're going to go into the object settings. We're going to add in here the X rotation, and we're also going to add the Y rotation. So this, of course, is all dependent on where your object is and what way it's actually facing. The X is relevant to the X of the object in here. So as you can see now, it's moving, it's going up and down and around while my camera rolls around it. So if I play this to you, the camera's still going around and the plane is going up and down. I'm actually going to reverse this because right now it's not reversed, so it's in reverse. Reverse it so now it'll actually be facing the correct way. Like I said, it's always relative to the layer itself. So now as you can see, this plane is moving up and down and it's still doing all its spins, all the same things, but now it's having this wave being applied to it. So this is a very quick effect to any layer. And like I said, this doesn't only work with layers, it works with cameras as well. So in the camera, if I was to apply this as well, I can come in here and I don't want the position to actually be waved. I want the rotation to wave so we can look kind of under it and over it just slightly. And we're going to come into the X rotation. We're going to enable that, and now you can see right now we're right under the plane, and as we come up we'll actually come right over the plane as well. I'm actually going to change the impact to 26% so we're not actually too far under it. Play it again and you'll see now we're getting a slight bounce on the camera. It's a bit hard to see with, of course, the plane moving itself. But if I was to disable the plane from moving, so now you'll be able to see this a little bit better once I've disabled the Wave-o-Matic for the plane, and you'll see that the camera is waving slightly up and down on the actual layer. So now we're going to be looking at the X dependent of Wave-o-Matic and how this works. So the X dependent is basically allowing you to make a chain for your layers. So if I select all these and quickly center the anchor point, select them all again, apply the position and rotation, that's been applied to every layer now. So I come over and I look at my Wave settings, I enable the wave, and I enable X dependent. So X dependent is working out where this layer is on the X, and then working out how the wave would affect it at that point in time. So if I quickly run through all of these, applying the wave and the X dependent, you'll get to see what I mean. So now that that's all been applied, if I was to play this, you'll see that they're all moving within their X values. So this is all on the same wave, all moving at the same sort of time. If I was to go in here and actually enable the rotation quickly, now you'll be able to see them all rotating as well along that X, so in time with their actual wave all together. So this is what this X dependent does. It allows you to quickly duplicate a layer, slightly change its position, and then you would have a layer following. You can then of course go into here and edit any settings you want, so you could change the impact of, say, this layer here. You wanted the impact to be 20%, everything's going to move at the right amount, and this layer here is going to be moving at a lot less, but still on the same wave. This means if you was to set this at intervals of different percentages, so here we have 10%, so we're going to go from 100 all the way down to 0. I'm going to quickly apply that on every setting. Okay, so that's all been applied. So now you can see what's happening is, as these layers are coming out, they're actually gradually increasing the amount of the wave. And this could be a desired effect, but you can actually manipulate this in any way you want. You could have them moving at different rotations or different speeds. And this is where the wave speed actually comes into play right now. So if we come over to here and select this triangle, if we was to increase this wave speed to 300, then what you're actually getting is you're getting a slight change in the length between these. If I was to set this to a lower number, for example, then this length of that wave is becoming a lot shorter. It's actually almost double. You can see this by how these are moving towards each other. So that even lower number, and they're becoming even less. So these are the settings you can play with. This is Wave-o-Matic, and this is how you can apply it to all your layers. I hope you enjoy this tool, and thank you all so much for supporting me in making these tools for you.